I don't tend to make many videos about veganism these days, as I've already explained. Most, if not all, of what I had to say about the topic, I did, and beating a dead horse. Well, that's very vegan, isn't it? So I don't engage in the conversation much anymore. But I did watch two debates that Garland Farms had versus, in total, four different vegans on the Crucible, and I just had some felt like contributing a little bit. So this first, I guess, debate he had with those two cyclists, I guess, whatever their names are, it's really not that important, if a bit disrespectful. Uh, those two were completely unprepared. Um, they thought that they could just spit back vegan propaganda at Garland and that was somehow going to fly. Uh, Clearly, they don't actually care about animals. What it probably is, as it tends to be the case with a lot of vegans, they're grossed out by eating meat, right? Or they feel guilty because of how visceral it is, right? How, well, they're eating flesh, right? They always remind you that is what you're doing. You're eating death. You're eating flesh. You're eating secretions, right? They're grossed out by their own diet, right? They have an eating disorder. Probably because over the years we've been, by and large, taken off the land. We no longer produce our own food. We're not engaged in food production. Um, well, speak for yourself, damn it. We're, consumers, and you know, reality's a bitch. And I heard that she bites. So while these guys thought they were just going to, give you the rhetoric, Garland actually is able to cut through that stuff and was able to stump the vegans and poke holes in the rhetoric and show how disingenuous, deceptive, and just downright dishonest it is, right? Clearly, the vegan agenda isn't interested in the animals, right? The well being of animals. And coincidentally, that was very apparent in Garland's next debate on the Crucible versus a couple more vegans. But the most appalling thing to me, which I remarked about many times on the channel in the past, about these vegans specifically, was the fact that it was brought to their attention that it could be, right? Maybe some further inquiry would be, required or whatever, but it could be that their choices actually result in more animal suffering than as if they were to, eat some meat and from, sourced from small farmers, perhaps, blah, 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 better, quote unquote, better sources, while also eating, you know, let's say organic or locally produced fruits and veggies, what have you, tubers. Whereas it was brought to their attention that it could be, right? If you want to look into it, go ahead, right? But that's the point. Are they going to, right? There is a chance, right? Even if you disagree with Garland, right? But like, on what basis, right? Why would you disagree? Do you have any evidence that what he's saying is wrong, in light of the fact that he provided evidence or was willing to post links, show me the studies, as they say, right? So it was brought to their attention that it could be that their diet results in more environmental damage, thus uh, animal deaths, right? More animal deaths. No, not the animals that we bring into existence, right? But wild animals that are, some of which are probably endangered, right? And also those animals' carcasses go more or less to waste, right? So it's kind of a double, if not triple whammy. So despite the fact that it was presented to them that it could be that their diet is actually more harmful and less vegan, whatever the fuck that means, right? They weren't at all interested in considering that possibility. At least that's what it seemed like. And because if they were interested, there would have been some kind of an effort on their part to reassess their stance, i.e., veganism, and or come to the table with some evidence, do some actual research, and try to debunk what it is that Garland is saying. Right? There was none of that occurred. They were just droning on with on and on and on with their vegan propaganda, talking points, rhetoric, and that's that, right? Their view of the world is set. The science is settled. We are vegan, right? We don't care what it means. We don't care if it's meaningless. This is who we are. This is our identity. And, we're too busy riding around on our bicycles to worry about the details, right? Like, are we actually consistent in our worldview? So then there was the debate between Garland and some vegan gays and some guy called Nutrivore. And soon as this Nutrivore got on, I just, right off the bat, I got ask yourself vibes. The guy just sounded like, right? Wait, wait. I am not interested in the meta as I talk about the conversation. But I'm not interested in talking about the conversation. So just a complete hypocrite, um, which is, I guess, what he wanted Garland to accuse him of. Garland, the problem with that debate, in my opinion, was that uh, they didn't press the vegans hard enough to commit to a position prior to the debate, as it was very well implied. I forget literally what the premise was or the proposition they were going to debate, but it was something along the lines of, vegan diet kills more animals than, or maybe a certain kind of vegan diet, the most popular, the mainstream vegan diet kills more animals, is more destructive to the environment, produces more suffering, right? Destroys more animals than some kind of diet that includes meat, maybe something along those lines, right? And it was implied, it was assumed that Garland was going to take the pro position and the vegans were going to take the anti. They were going to disagree with the premise, and that's what they were going to debate, right? That is Garland's wheelhouse, right? That's what his channel is about. Um, Again, however clumsily the debate was presented or maybe even worded, um, the premise of the debate, um, the proposition that they were going to debate, yeah, there's some fault with Garland and Crucible. Andrew, is it? Sure, that there's definitely some fault to be put on those guys, but I mean, come on. Anybody who's halfway intelligent and intellectually honest would admit that it was implied. It was obvious what the debate was supposed to be, right? Because that's Garland's wheelhouse, right? He's got the stats, he's got the data, he cuts through the vegan propaganda, right? His whole channel, you could say, is a response to a certain vegan propaganda, right? That's what he fights. That's what he goes up against. So if you're gonna debate Garland, I think it's assumed to a certain degree what it is that debate is going to be. It's implied, and it was in the proposition, right? But yeah, they didn't really make the vegans commit to taking the a stance against the proposition. But it's fucking your whole existence. I don't have to watch these guys' channels to know that to some degree, right? Uh, their existence here in YouTube or social media, and I would say vegan gazes to a large degree, if not 100%, and this other other guys, um, maybe to a lesser degree. But at the end of the day, right? They're vegan. They are pro-veganism. They represent. They're activists of some sort, right? The laziest activists on the planet. Obviously, all they do is talk. Um, they represent veganism, right? And in the proposition to the debate, um, well, Garland was taking the anti-vegan stance, and so it was assumed that the vegans were going to take the pro-veganism stance, as they do with their whole being here, right? Or they're that's what they're about here in social media to some degree, right? Probably large degree. That's what they're here for. So it was intellectually dishonest for the vegans to refuse to essentially debate what the premise implied they were going to be debating, and they wanted to make this, well, mostly just this nutrivore guy, right? Um, he just wanted to, well, he wanted to have a philosophical debate, and he mostly just wanted to poke holes in how the premise was presented. That I think he was going after trying to show that the premise is, or the debate proposition um, contained a fallacy of argument from hypocrisy, right? But I didn't quite understand that whole thing because it was really about their inconsistency of their worldview, right? The inconsistency of the vegan worldview. So I think it still could have been salvaged, the whole, because they got stuck on this hypocrisy thing. When, yeah, they're definitely, yeah, the debate premise was alleging that they were hypocrites, but that wasn't really the argument. The argument was that their worldview is inconsistent, right? Because if they care about animal suffering and minimizing the exploitation and the suffering of animals, well, maybe they shouldn't be eating the diet that they're eating, right? Maybe they should be eating meat from sourced locally from, humane operations. But, as it tends to be the case with these phony philosophers, man, because I say phony because ultimately philosophy is about truth, right? And that entails honesty, you know what I mean? Being keeping an open mind and being intellectually um, honest and debating in good faith, right? Does it not? Right? Where at the end of the day, philosophy, correct me if I'm wrong, is not about um, showing who's slicker, showing who has studied more fallacies, right? Who's a better chess player, if you will. It should be, at least I think, about getting to the bottom of it, right? It should be about truth, knowledge. So these guys are a bunch of phonies, man. They're a bunch of phonies because once again, maybe it could be shown that their diet is contrary to the definition, the mainstream definition of veganism, right? Nowhere in that definition um, is there a clause or anything about who's a slicker uh, sophist, right? Who could who could poke more holes in what, um, insofar as technicalities are concerned, right? Who who could poke more holes in, or who could expose how poorly a certain argument or debate premise is presented, right? We all know what the debate was about, was supposed to be about, and the vegans refused to debate. They were looking for a DQ win, basically, on the technicality, and the fact, taking advantage of the fact that um, the Crucible and Garland did not explicitly get them to admit to what it is that they were going to be debating, right? So, but once again, the vegans proved to be intellectually dishonest. Surprise, surprise. And they show that they don't actually give a fuck about animals, right? Because if they gave a fuck about animals, they would debate that and not some technicality concerning how the argument was brought to them when they knew damn well what the argument was, right? So it was pathetic. It was just like ego stroking, and it had nothing to do with the animals, right? I thought they were supposed to be the voice for the voiceless, right? I thought they were supposed to speak for the animals, but they never actually attempted to do that. So it's right. If you have a vegan versus anti-vegan debate, what the fuck do you think it's supposed to be about? You would think it'd be about, animals, and yeah, but it wasn't. So these vegans are frauds, man. Veganism, as I stated a million times on this channel in the past, there is no argument, there is no sound, valid, legitimate, convincing, well, I guess that's subjective, argument for veganism. It doesn't exist. It's not there. Anyway, uh, they were mildly entertaining, these debates, if a bit frustrating. But they, in summation, right, they just, once again, show that vegans don't give a fuck about animals. They really don't.